Now we welcome to the stage Waterstones children's laureate and award-winning author Frank Cottrell-Boyce. Now Frank Cottrell-Boyce is a screenwriter as well, and his debut novel Millions won the CILIP Carnegie Medal. Other books include Cosmic, Runaway Robot and The Wonder Brothers, and this is the bit that I'm really excited about. Frank co-devised the London 2012 Olympics opening ceremony with Danny Boyle. Did you put the Spice Girls on the bus? I want to find out. Please give a round of applause for Frank Cottrell-Boyce. Did you put the Spice Girls on the bus?
No, that's the closing ceremony.
Oh, I got it wrong. You're a legend anyway,
I actually had a T-shirt that said, no, just the opening ceremony. This is my speech, so in case you're worried, it's not very long. Actually, do you know what? I got an honorary doctorate from Liverpool University just after that, and it was my, I live in Liverpool, it's my home, it's going to be my big moment. And I took my little speech out and I looked at it and it said, cherry tomatoes, basil. And I remember just staring at it thinking, is it a metaphor? It's like, I'm here because I'm the Children's Laureate, which is a role that I'm supposed to advocate for reading and books and children. It's sort of a job, but it's sort of an accolade. Actually, the day I got it, we had to go to Leeds, and I took my grandchildren out of school, and we weren't supposed to tell anyone what we were doing, so I'd said, well, I'm getting an accolade, and we went, there was this big ceremony, and a band, and speeches, and then went for a meal, and at the end of it, my youngest grandchild went, Frankie, when are we getting this accolade? And I went, well, this was it. And she went, oh, I thought it was a drink. When I took on the job, I was very, very aware that the children in our country have been at the sharp end of two massive disasters. One was the pandemic, and the other one was austerity. And the children have really borne the cost of both those things. And I was very aware of it partly because, this is how old I am, my mum was evacuated during the war. And I was really aware that the last time children's lives were disrupted to that extent was evacuation. And my mum died recently, and to the day she died, she would sort of talk about what had happened. It's something that lasted and almost the last outing that we did was I took her back to the place where she'd been evacuated. And this huge, huge thing had happened. And I was very aware that when that happened, a disaster is a kind of barium meal, isn't it? That kind of exposes the flaws and weaknesses and blockages in a system. And at the end of the war, people were aware that city children were in a really bad way. They were undernourished, they were undereducated, they were undercared for, because people in the home counties and in rural areas had seen them. And that led to the acceleration of the Beveridge Report and the welfare state and all that. I don't see any national conversation about what's happened to our children as a result of austerity and as a result of the pandemic. And I'm very, very, very aware that the other thing that crises do is they accelerate inequality. That, divisions that were there before are massively, massively accelerated. God bless him. I remember talking to my son about online lessons, and him saying, God, it's absolutely fine for me. I'm sitting in my bedroom in a dressing gown with fast broadband like Bertie Wooster. But some of my mates are sitting in a corner of the kitchen using their data. So, that's such a sort of minor example, but it really, really has accelerated inequality. And I was very, very aware of that coming into the role. So and normally this is a role that talks about libraries and school and reading and literature and all that. I just thought, I want to find out what's going on. So Book Trust have taken me all over the country to see best practice. And I've seen things that are heart-scalding and things that are heart-lifting. Is that a phrase? I don't know. Like some things that would break your heart and some things that would lift your heart. So here's something that really lifted my heart. I went to the Baby Lab in East London, which is run by a neuroscientist called Professor Sam Wass. And he wires up babies' brains while their mother or the carer reads to them and watches what happens. And it's looking at these two monitors with like really basic graphics on them is one of the most transcendently beautiful things that's ever happened in my life. Sam's thing is that being a baby is completely overwhelming. You were an aquatic creature for 9 months, and then suddenly you're in the air, and it's like everything that happens is new. It's like, oh my God, light, wind, me mum, milk. It's just too much. And he talks about how reading, it creates this moment of pause. A kid is looking at a picture, a kid is listening to its carer's heartbeat, and everything calms down for a little while. And if you think about it, if you've got kids, but I've got a lot of kids, but that thing that irritates you when you're reading them, that's a child having agency. It turns the page back, it turns the page upside down, it bites the book. This is an area of agency. And, it's a bit like when they're in the high chair and they're constantly throwing stuff on the floor for you to pick up, this sort of experiment with gravity. Beautiful, just one of the best days of my life. And what I was watching on those screens was the biology of happiness. That something is happening in that moment between someone who cares for a baby and the baby that is happening at a completely synaptic, biological level, right? You're watching the apparatus of happiness or resilience being built in a child. Absolutely amazing that you've got this super powerful tool to use, and absolutely shattering that so many kids don't get that. The number of kids arriving at school without having had that has gone up and up and up and up and up, and there's so many reasons for it. Some of them are cultural and some of them are political. So that I wanted to do what I could to make sure that privilege goes to some of the other kids that I've seen. Book Trust have taken me to prisons, and I've been out with health visitors and midwives and been talking to foster parents and all that stuff. Everyone should have the opportunity to have that apparatus of happiness built inside themselves. And I was really, really aware of it. So on that trip back to where she'd been evacuated, she was evacuated to a convent in North Wales, my mum. And she had these anecdotes about it, but I remember thinking, they're not your anecdotes, they're your big sister's anecdotes. And the minute we walked in, she remembered this thing. She remembered that the night before her first communion, she'd heard her dad's voice, who was away at sea. And she'd heard her dad's voice, and he'd found a way to get there. And that thing of a voice in the night, voices. So this thing about the reading thing, it marks a voice. The power of your voice in somebody else's biology is this incredible thing. So my dad had dementia, and for years and years and years, he never knew where he was or who I was. But if I read to him, and he was just listening to my voice, we were in the same space. That the power of your voice reaches through that dark, dark labyrinth. Super aware of all these privileges that this gives, and super aware that so many kids are not getting it. So traveling around the country with Book Trust, seeing, trusted buildings are such an important part of all this. Buildings where you can go in, whether it's your library or your family centre or what was Sure Start, and watching those buildings being erased and turning up to those places where people have tried to hold on to those buildings and lost them. I'm just thinking of one particularly near me where it was a kind of a Sure Start centre where you could walk in and it didn't mean anything that you walked through the door. You could be going to have your baby weighed, you could be going to meet someone. There was nothing that signalled anything remedial about walking through that door. And they've tried to keep it open by putting more and more and more social work things in. So it becomes not a trusted building, it becomes and I'm watching what was children's stuff being colonised, and marked and stigmatised, and that loss. So what can I tell you? So with Book Trust's help, we had a summit, not as glamorous as this one, but we had a summit in Liverpool, and where I was trying to do exactly what Fatima is talking about de-siloing, sharing best practice, introducing people to each other, whatever field they're in, where they're doing this work, because that's the only way forward. We just do not have, this is not to slag off other laureates at all, because they've done those things and those jobs are really great jobs, but campaigning to get kit back, to get libraries back. We don't have time to wait for that. We really do not have time. Even while we're sitting here talking today, some children are ceasing to be children. You know, it's really, really urgent, this job. We are in danger of like losing a generation and not talking about it. So what was I going to say? Yeah, so I have got a note somewhere. So in conclusion, cherry tomatoes. Watching in that baby lab, what I was watching was someone give a hug that lasts a lifetime. A hug that lasts a lifetime. That's what those bonding moments are for, and they should be available to every child, and they're not. And the way that we can turn that is not by, in time, is not by demanding more kit, but by, through you, through the work that you are already doing, to speak to you, speaking to each other, through what Fatima's done here today, which is like to create a synergy that will catalyze it. It needs to be done straight away, and it will be done through the goodwill of people. Standing at the end of that summit, I stood and watched people exchange phone numbers. GPs with social workers, teachers, people from education, people from the charity sector. I watched them and I was thinking, this is like the baby lab. I'm watching new synaptic pathways being built, you know, and I hope that is what happens at the end of today. One of them was a neighbour of mine who's a GP with a great big practice in Kirby. Kirby's a huge out-of-town estate that was built in the 60s to rehouse people. And it's kind of got, basically all my cousins lived there. And so I'm telling you, it's wonderful. And the people are great, but it's very cut off. And my friend Mike, the doctor, just started straight away, just went and wanted to start a reading group with some of the mums and the carers and the grandparents there. And I went with him on the first day. And the social worker said, listen, they're crazy. And you'd be lucky to get 10 minutes. I took Dear Zoo, and I read Dear Zoo the way it should be read, not as a book, but as a recipe. You know, it's not the meal, it's the recipe. It's full, and it's a book. I don't know if you know Dear Zoo, but I wrote to the zoo, and I said, you know, and they keep sending the wrong pet. So it's a book about frustration. You know, it models frustration. And I made Dear Zoo last for about an hour. They absolutely loved it. And on the way up, Mike had said to me, I know that some of these girls, I mean, they're mums, but a lot of them are teenagers. Some of these girls, they can't read, and I wonder how we're going to broach that. And that's why I'd chosen Dear Zoo, because you just need to memorize one sentence, and then the pictures do the rest. And he said, but I don't know how we're going to broach that, because obviously there's a stigma about that, and they might not want to talk about it. And Dear Zoo, like 6 of them just said straight away, I can't read. Why were they so upfront about that? Because everybody in the end wants the best for the kids in their lives. And everyone in the end will step up to the plate if they can see a way of doing that. And you facilitating that is incredible. You know, you're building a fence at the edge of the cliff so that there doesn't need to be an ambulance at the bottom. That's amazing. DCI Dixon Leach said he wanted to make sure that we treated all children as though they were our own. I think we should be treating them as they are our future. I know that's a banal thing to say, but I think nationally we've forgotten it. And every child is the future, and the future is coming at us so quickly. Speaking as, you won't believe this to look at my complexion, but as a granddad who's got a grandson who can sing bass, you know, but he was only born 3 weeks ago. How the hell did that happen? You know, it's coming at us so fast, and we don't have time to wait for great big political initiatives. It's completely down to you and the people that in this room and what you do when you're leaving this summit. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Just go.
Stay with me, stay with me. Thank you so much, that was brilliant.